I stared at my son's wedding invitation with a mix of disbelief and heartbreak. My name is Donna. I am 59 years old, and I just discovered that my only son Jake has been telling his friends and fiancé that I died years ago. The mother who sacrificed everything for him, who loved him fiercely through every stage of his life, was erased with a lie. Now I face an impossible choice as I hold this gold-embossed card. Should I stay silent, or should I show up with my lawyer and expose the truth? Before I tell you how I walked down that aisle and confronted my son, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had family betray you in ways you never imagined. I never thought I would need to prove I was alive, especially not to my own son's wedding guests. But to understand how we got here, you need to know our story. I built a successful career as an interior designer, working with clients across 3 states. I was proud of what I had accomplished, especially as a woman in the early 90s, when people still questioned if women should prioritize career over family. I chose both. I married Richard when I was 25, and we had Jake 2 years later. For 10 years we were a normal, happy family, but like many marriages, ours eventually collapsed under the weight of Richard's infidelity and growing distance. When Jake turned 12, Richard and I finalized our divorce. Richard moved across the country for a new job and a new girlfriend, leaving me to raise our son alone. While he sent child support checks, they were often late, and he rarely made time for phone calls with Jake, let alone visits. Those years alone with Jake were challenging but precious. I rearranged my work schedule to be home when he returned from school. I helped with homework, attended every soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. We developed rituals that were just ours. Sunday morning pancakes, where we would compete to create the most outlandish shapes, summer camping trips, where we would tell ghost stories until we scared ourselves silly, and Christmas Eve movie marathons with enough popcorn to feed an army. "Mom, you're my best friend," he told me one night when he was 15, after I had picked him up from a party where kids had started drinking. He had called me instead of joining in, and I made sure never to make him feel bad about needing a rescue. Jake was charming from the day he was born. He had this smile that could melt even the strictest teacher's resolve, and he knew it. He was handsome like his father, with the same dark hair and deep-set eyes that crinkled when he laughed. He was also smart, earning scholarships that helped when I paid for his college education. But sometimes I noticed a concerning pattern. When things didn't go his way, he could become self-centered, expecting the world to bend to his needs. I chalked it up to normal teenage self-absorption and believed he would grow out of it. During his college years, I took on extra design projects to help cover his expenses. I lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment so he could live in a nice dorm, then a comfortable off-campus apartment. I drove an old car so he could have spending money for social activities. I wasn't wealthy like some of his friends' parents, but I made sure he never felt the financial strain I was under. The first real change in our relationship happened during his junior year of college when he met Amelia. She came from significant wealth. Her father owned a chain of luxury hotels, and her mother's family had old money. The first time Jake brought her home during spring break, I noticed how she looked around my apartment with barely concealed disapproval. "Your place is quaint," she said, in a tone that made it clear quaint was not a compliment. I tried to connect with her, asking about her studies, her family, her interests. She answered politely, but briefly, creating a wall of courteous distance between us. Jake seemed different around her too. He mentioned my outdated decorating style, though my apartment reflected current design trends I used in my work. He corrected my grammar, once something he had never done before. He seemed embarrassed by me. After that visit, Jake's calls became less frequent. He started making excuses for missed holidays, claiming school projects or trips with Amelia's family took priority. When I did see him, Amelia was rarely with him, always busy with some other commitment. Her parents are pretty particular about who she spends time with, Jake explained once, not meeting my eyes. They have expectations about the kind of people in their daughter's life. After graduation, Jake moved to Boston, where Amelia's family had connections that helped him secure a position at a prestigious financial firm. Our communication dwindled to occasional texts and rare phone calls on birthdays or major holidays. Each time I suggested visiting him, there was always a reason why it wasn't a good time. Work was too busy. His apartment was being renovated. Amelia's family had planned something. I told myself this was normal. Children grow up, build their own lives, but the ache of missing him never subsided. It was a random Tuesday last spring when my world imploded. I was scrolling through social media during my lunch break when I saw a post from Tyler, one of Jake's closest college friends. "Thinking of you today, Jake. I know the anniversary of losing your mom is always tough. Your strength inspires us all." I stared at my phone, unable to process what I was reading. There must be some mistake. I was very much alive, sitting in my office eating a tuna sandwich. My hands trembled as I clicked on Tyler's profile to see if I could make sense of this bizarre post. What I found was worse than I could have imagined. In the comments, Jake had responded with a simple, "Thanks, man, means a lot." Other friends had added their support. "Your mom would be so proud of the man you've become." And, "She's smiling down on you, bro." In disbelief, I began searching through Jake's social media, something I rarely did since he hardly ever posted. There were sparse references scattered across years: a Mother's Day post about honoring her memory, a throwback photo from his childhood with the caption, "Grateful for the short time we had together." My stomach knotted as I found more evidence. An article about his firm's charity work mentioned how Peterson overcame personal tragedy, losing his mother at a young age. A community newsletter covering his engagement to Amelia referred to him as having been orphaned as a teenager. Orphaned. The word stung like a physical slap. His father was alive too, just uninvolved. I left work early that day, my mind spinning. Back at my apartment, I called Jake, my heart pounding as I waited through 4 rings before he answered. "Mom, is everything okay?" He sounded genuinely concerned, which only confused me more. "I don't know, Jake. You tell me." My voice was surprisingly steady. "I just saw Tyler's post about the anniversary of my death." The silence on the other end stretched for so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. "It's complicated," he finally said, his voice low and defensive. "Complicated. Telling people your mother is dead when she isn't is complicated. You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he said. "Amelia's family, they have certain expectations, a certain image. And I don't fit that image." The pain in my chest was almost unbearable. It was just easier, okay? Easier than explaining our situation. "What situation, Jake? That your mother is a middle-class interior designer who sacrificed everything for you, that I'm not wealthy or connected enough for your new life?" His voice hardened. "See, this is exactly why I did it. You always make everything about you, about your sacrifices." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Jake, please help me understand." He sighed, and when he spoke again, his words shattered whatever was left of my heart. "Amelia's parents wouldn't approve of someone like you. They want the best for their daughter. Old money, marrying old money, legacy, pedigree. They wouldn't accept her marrying someone with a living mother like you. So I made a choice." "A choice to erase me," I whispered. "It wasn't personal." "Not personal. Erasing my existence, denying that I was alive, wasn't personal." "Does Amelia know the truth?" I asked. Another pause. "No, and she can't find out. The wedding is in 3 months. Her family has invested over $100,000 in it already." Before I could respond, he added, "I have to go. I have a dinner with Amelia's parents. Please don't make this difficult, Mom. Just understand that this is how it has to be." He hung up, leaving me sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by photos of the boy I had raised, wondering where I had gone so wrong. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed our conversation along with every moment of Jake's childhood, searching for signs I had missed. Had I been too permissive, too strict? Had my divorce from Richard damaged him more than I realized? I tortured myself with questions that had no answers. The next morning, I called Richard for the first time in years. After awkward small talk, I asked if he knew about Jake's lies. I heard something about it, he admitted reluctantly. Jake mentioned that it was easier this way with Amelia's family being who they are. And you were okay with this? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. It wasn't my place to interfere, he said. Jake's an adult. He makes his own choices. Did he tell you not to tell me? Richard's uncomfortable silence was answer enough. Are you going to the wedding? I asked. Yes. I received an invitation last month. Last month, while I had heard nothing. He asked me not to mention it to you, Richard added, confirming my suspicion. He said it would be easier for everyone. Easier. That word again. My son had decided that erasing my existence was easier than acknowledging his working-class mother. 3 weeks before the wedding date, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. The heavy cream paper and gold embossing screamed expense. Inside was a formal invitation to the wedding of Jacob Richard Peterson and Amelia Catherine Huntington, along with a handwritten note from Jake. Mom, I'm trying to make things right. Please come, but don't make a scene. We can talk after the ceremony. Jake. I read the note a dozen times, tracing my finger over his handwriting. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of the pain he had caused, just the expectation that I would show up quietly and play along with whatever story he decided to tell. The invitation created a storm of conflicting emotions. Part of me was relieved to be acknowledged at all. Another part felt intense anger at the audacity of his request. Come to the wedding, but essentially remain invisible. Be present, but don't expect to be recognized as the mother of the groom. After all, dead mothers can't attend weddings. For days I carried the invitation everywhere, taking it out at random moments to confirm it was real. I cancelled appointments with clients, unable to focus on color schemes and furniture arrangements when my life had become so surreal. Finally, I called my closest friend Patricia, who had known Jake since he was a baby. He did what? She exclaimed when I explained the situation. Donna, that's beyond hurtful. That's delusional. What should I do? I asked, desperate for guidance. Part of me wants to go and demand recognition. Part of me never wants to see him again. If you go, Patricia said carefully, don't go alone, bring backup. What kind of backup? Someone who can support you emotionally, but also someone who understands the serious nature of what Jake has done. What about Marcus? He's a lawyer, right? Marcus was not just any lawyer, but a family law attorney I had known for years. We had dated briefly after my divorce before deciding we were better as friends. He had watched Jake grow up and had always shown genuine interest in his life. When I called Marcus and explained the situation, his initial response was stunned silence, followed by a string of questions that revealed the lawyer in him analyzing the situation. Has he used this lie for financial gain? Claimed death benefits, used your supposed death to gain sympathy in professional settings. There could be legal implications. I don't know, I admitted. I hadn't thought about that. Well, beyond the legal aspects, what he's done is emotionally abusive, Donna. He has essentially gaslighted an entire community into believing something that causes you significant emotional harm. If you decide to go to this wedding, I'd be happy to accompany you, both as your friend and as a legal advisor. With Marcus's support, I made my decision. I would attend the wedding not to cause a scene, but to assert my existence. I spent hours choosing the right outfit, something elegant, but not flashy appropriate for a mother of the groom. I selected a tailored navy dress with a matching jacket, classic pearl earrings, and low heels. I could stand in comfortably if the confrontation I anticipated became prolonged. In the days leading up to the wedding, I barely slept. I rehearsed what I might say, how I would respond to different scenarios. Would Jake pretend to be shocked to see me alive? Would he introduce me as a distant relative? Would he have security remove me? Each possibility sent fresh waves of anxiety through me. Marcus and I drove to the neighboring state the day before the wedding. The 5-hour journey gave us more time to prepare. Remember, stay calm, no matter what happens, Marcus advised. The moment you show excessive emotion is the moment they can dismiss you as hysterical or unstable. We arrived at the hotel near the venue that evening. As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I nearly convinced myself to go home. What would showing up really accomplish beyond creating a spectacle? Was I doing this for closure or for revenge? But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that social media post, "Thinking of you today, Jake. I know the anniversary of losing your mom is always tough." I thought of all the Mother's Days I had spent alone, while my son likely received sympathy for being motherless. I thought of the grandmother role I would never be allowed to have if Jake and Amelia had children, because how could a dead woman be a grandmother? No. I would not go home. I would not remain erased. The morning of the wedding arrived with picture-perfect weather, as if the universe was smiling on the union built on lies. I took extra care with my appearance, applying makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes from another sleepless night. Marcus arrived at my hotel room at 10, looking sharp in a charcoal suit, his silver-streaked dark hair neatly combed back. His presence immediately calmed my frayed nerves. "How are you holding up?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Terrified, angry, sad, ready. The emotions swirled inside me, impossible to separate. We spent an hour discussing strategy. The goal wasn't to ruin the wedding entirely, but to assert the truth. "Let's observe first," Marcus suggested. "See how they're presenting you or your absence. If possible, we should try to speak with Jake privately before making any public statements. And if that's not possible, then we do what we need to do. The truth deserves to be heard." We arrived at the venue, an elegant estate with manicured gardens and a historic mansion 30 minutes before the ceremony. The opulence was overwhelming. Statues lined the driveway, fountains sparkled in the sunlight, and staff in formal attire directed guests to the ceremony space on the back lawn. I felt distinctly out of place, aware that my entire apartment could fit in the mansion's entryway. As we followed the stream of guests toward rows of white chairs on the lawn, I overheard snippets of conversation that made my blood run cold. "Such a sad story about his mother," one older woman said to her companion. "I heard she died when he was in high school," the other replied. "Cancer, I think. He never talks about it so brave." I froze in my tracks, the casual conversation about my fictional death hitting me harder than expected. Marcus gently took my elbow, steadying me. "We can still leave," he whispered. "No one has seen us yet." For a moment I considered it. Walking away would be easier. I could go home, block Jake's number, and try to build a life without the son who had so thoroughly rejected me. But then another guest walked past a young woman telling her date. "It's so romantic that he's honoring his mother's memory by getting married in a garden." Apparently she loved flowers. I did love flowers. That small truth embedded in the larger lie strengthened my resolve. "I'm staying," I told Marcus firmly. We took seats in the back row, perfect for observing without being immediately noticed. The ceremony space filled quickly, with at least 200 guests, all in expensive attire that screamed old money and privilege. An elegant string quartet played softly as everyone settled in. And then I saw him, my son. Jake stood at the altar beside the officiant and his groomsmen, handsome in a custom tuxedo, his hair styled perfectly. He looked confident, happy, completely at ease in this world of wealth that he had chosen over honesty, over me. The music changed, signaling the start of the procession. Bridesmaids in pale pink dresses walked down the aisle, followed by an adorable flower girl, scattering rose petals. I barely registered them, my focus entirely on Jake, waiting for the moment he would notice me. It happened as the bridal march began, and everyone stood for Amelia's entrance. Jake's gaze swept over the assembled guests one last time, and then he saw me. Even from a distance I could see the blood drain from his face. His confident posture faltered, his eyes widening in panic. Amelia appeared at the end of the aisle, a vision in white lace, escorted by her distinguished-looking father. But Jake wasn't looking at his bride. He was staring at me, a ghost who refused to stay dead. Amelia noticed his distraction as she reached him. She whispered something, her smile faltering when he didn't immediately respond. He shook his head slightly visibly, gathering himself to focus on the ceremony. The officiant, a distinguished older man, began with warm words about love and commitment. And then came the moment that propelled me from my seat. We are especially moved today as we witness Jacob's journey to this joyous occasion. A young man who has overcome the tragic loss of his mother to become the outstanding individual who stands before us ready to begin a new chapter with Amelia. A collective murmur of sympathetic agreement rippled through the crowd. Marcus squeezed my hand in warning, but it was too late. I was already standing. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the sudden silence. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding about my death." Every head turned. Gasps erupted from multiple directions. Someone dropped a glass, the shattering sound stark in the stunned quiet that followed my words. I began walking slowly down the aisle, Marcus beside me, his presence lending me strength with each step. Jake stood frozen, his face a mask of horror. Amelia looked from him to me and back again, confusion evident in her expression. "What is happening?" she whispered loudly enough for those nearby to hear. "Jake, who is this woman?" I reached the altar, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "I'm Donna Peterson, Jake's mother, and as you can see, I'm very much alive." The silence that followed my announcement lasted only seconds before chaos erupted. Amelia's mother, a slender woman with an expensive haircut and perfectly tailored outfit, was the first to speak. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, rising from her front row seat. "Is this some kind of distasteful prank?" Amelia turned to Jake, her veil slightly askew, her expression transitioning from confusion to dawning horror. "Jake, what is she talking about? You said your mother died when you were 16. Jake's face had gone from pale to flushed sweat, beading on his forehead, despite the mild temperature. "Amelia, I can explain." He began reaching for her hand, which she immediately withdrew. "Everyone please remain calm," the officiant interjected clearly out of his depth. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess to sort this out." Jake stepped toward me, his expression a mix of fury and panic. "Mom, you need to leave. Now." He grabbed my arm, attempting to guide me away from the altar. Marcus smoothly inserted himself between us. "I suggest you remove your hand from your mother's arm, Mr. Peterson. I'm Marcus Daniels, her attorney, and we're not going anywhere until the truth is acknowledged." "Attorney," Jake sputtered. "You brought a lawyer to my wedding. I brought a witness to help me reclaim my existence," I replied, maintaining the calm dignity I had practiced for days. "Since you've spent years telling people I'm dead." Amelia's father, a tall man with silver hair and an intimidating presence, stepped forward. "Someone better explain what's happening right now." His commanding tone suggested he was accustomed to being obeyed without question. I turned to address the assembled guests, many of whom were standing now phones, discreetly recording the unfolding drama. I apologize for the interruption, but I felt it necessary to correct a significant falsehood. "My name is Donna Peterson. I am Jake's mother. Despite what many of you have been told, I did not die of cancer when Jake was 16. I did not die at all. I raised my son as a single mother after his father and I divorced. I paid for his college education. I have attempted to maintain a relationship with him despite his increasing distance over the years." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I continued, my voice steady. "I only discovered recently that Jake has been telling people I passed away years ago. I received an invitation to this wedding 3 weeks ago with a note asking me to come but not make a scene. I came not to disrupt your celebration, but because I could not continue to be erased." Jake stepped forward, his face contorted with anger. "You're ruining the most important day of my life," he hissed. "This is exactly why I did what I did. You always make everything about you." His words stung, but I maintained my composure. "Family relationships should be built on truth, Jake, not convenient fictions." Amelia had been standing silently processing the revelation. Now she slowly removed her engagement ring, placing it carefully on the officiant's podium. "I can't do this," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't marry someone I don't know, and clearly I don't know you at all." She turned to her parents. "I need some time." Then she walked down the aisle and into the mansion, her mother hurrying after her. Guests began rising from their seats, uncertain whether to leave or stay. The wedding party stood awkwardly at the altar, the groomsmen exchanging bewildered glances. Amelia's father fixed Jake with a cold stare. "My office, now." He looked at me, his expression unreadable. "You too, Miss Peterson. And your attorney. We need to discuss this privately." We followed him into the mansion, through an elegant foyer, and into a wood-paneled study that smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Amelia and her mother were already there. Amelia seated on a sofa, her wedding gown pooled around her, her mother hovering protectively. Jake tried again to explain. "Mr. Huntington. Mrs. Huntington, I can explain everything." "Please do," Mr. Huntington said coldly. "Explain why you've been lying about something so fundamental as your mother's existence." Jake ran his hand through his carefully styled hair, messing it up in a gesture I remembered from his childhood, when he was caught in a lie. "When I met Amelia, I was intimidated by your family's status. I come from a simple background. My father left when I was young. My mother did her best, but we struggled. I flinched at being characterized as a struggle he had to overcome. I may have embellished some details about my background," he continued, "and it just snowballed from there." "Embellished?" Amelia stood up, her voice sharp. "You told me your mother died of breast cancer when you were 16. You showed me a locket you said contained her ashes. You made me visit a grave, Jake. I felt physically ill. A grave whose grave had he taken her to. I needed to fit in with your world," Jake pleaded. "Your parents made it clear they expected you to marry someone from the right background. We expected honesty," Mr. Huntington interrupted. "Integrity, character, not fairy tales." "And what about me?" I finally asked, looking directly at my son. "Did you consider what it would do to me, hearing that you'd rather have a dead mother than me?" Jake's face crumpled, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from him. "It wasn't about you, Mom. It was exactly about me. About erasing me because I didn't fit the image you wanted to project." As Huntington, who had been silently observing, spoke up. "I think we all need time to process this situation. The wedding is obviously postponed." She looked at me with surprising kindness. "Miss Peterson, I'm truly sorry for what you've experienced." Amelia stood and walked to Jake. "I need space. Don't call me. Don't text. I'll contact you when or if I'm ready to talk." With that, she walked out, leaving Jake staring after her. Mr. Huntington addressed the stunned groom. "I suggest you go explain to your guests that the wedding will not be taking place today. My assistant will help coordinate refunds for those who traveled." His tone made it clear the conversation was over. As we left the study, Jake turned to me, his expression hardening again. "I hope you're satisfied. You've ruined everything." Marcus stepped forward. "Your choices ruined things, Mr. Peterson. Your mother simply refused to be erased." Jake stormed off without another word, leaving me standing in the opulent hallway of the mansion, feeling both vindicated and heartbroken. Marcus drove us back to the hotel in silence. The emotional adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me hollow and exhausted. "You did well," he said finally, as we pulled into the parking lot. "You were dignified and clear. No one could reasonably blame you for what happened today." But reasonable or not, I knew Jake blamed me entirely. The look of fury and betrayal on his face as he walked away would haunt me for a long time. Back in my hotel room, I collapsed onto the bed fully clothed, too drained to even change. My phone began buzzing with notifications. News travels fast in the age of social media, and apparently a dead mother showing up at her son's wedding made for irresistible gossip. There were messages from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, old friends who had seen posts about the incident, even a former college roommate asking if the crazy wedding story people were sharing was about my Jake. Around 8 that evening, my phone chimed with a text from Jake. "Hope you're happy. You've destroyed my relationship, humiliated me in front of everyone I know, and probably ruined my career. This is why I needed a different story. You're toxic and selfish. Don't contact me again." His words cut deep, despite their unfairness. I didn't respond, knowing anything I said would only fuel his anger. Instead, I turned off my phone and cried myself to sleep, mourning the relationship I had obviously lost long before today's confrontation. I woke to a knock on my hotel room door the next morning. Assuming it was Marcus checking on me, I opened it without looking through the peephole still in yesterday's rumpled clothes. To my shock, Amelia stood in the hallway, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, her face bare of makeup, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked younger, more vulnerable than the polished bride of yesterday. "May I come in?" she asked tentatively. Still stunned, I stepped aside to let her enter. The room was small and basic, nothing like the luxury she was accustomed to, but she didn't seem to notice as she perched on the edge of the desk chair. "I needed to talk to you," she began. "To understand, Jake has been telling me about his dead mother for 3 years. He took me to a grave in Boston Cemetery with the name Donna Peterson on it. He has a framed photo of you on his nightstand with black ribbon around it." She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Why would he do that? I sat on the bed, unsure how to explain something I didn't fully understand myself. Jake has always been concerned with appearances, with fitting in. He was charming and popular, but also insecure. When he met you and saw your family's world, I think he felt inadequate. "Because you're not wealthy?" she asked bluntly. "Because I'm a middle-class interior designer who lives in a modest apartment and drives a 10-year-old car," I confirmed. "Because his father was largely absent. Because we don't have the pedigree he thought your family expected." Amelia twisted her hands in her lap. "My parents can be snobs," she admitted. "But they've never demanded I only date people from wealthy families. My sister is married to a high school teacher, for God's sake." This new information hit me hard. Jake's elaborate lie hadn't even been necessary. "Did he ever mention me at all, the real me?" I asked, dreading the answer. "He said his parents divorced when he was young. He mentioned his father occasionally, but I assumed he didn't talk about you because the loss was too painful." She shook her head. "I feel so stupid." I should have seen the signs. The way he would change the subject when I asked for details about you. How he never had childhood photos, except a few he claimed were all he had left. "You believed him because most people don't lie about something so significant," I said gently. "This isn't your fault. I've postponed the wedding indefinitely," she said, looking down at her bare ring finger. "I need time to think about whether I can ever trust him again." I nodded, understanding completely. "What will you tell your family and friends? The truth. That Jake lied about something fundamental, and I need space to decide what that means for our relationship." She stood ready to leave. "Thank you for talking with me, and I'm sorry. For whatever it's worth, I would have been proud to have you as my mother-in-law. The real you." After she left, I sat for a long time processing our conversation. There was a painful irony in the fact that Jake's lie had been unnecessary even for the goal he claimed to be pursuing. Returning home the next day felt surreal. My apartment, my familiar space, seemed different somehow, as if the foundation of my life had shifted. In many ways it had. The next few weeks brought an overwhelming mix of reactions. Friends and acquaintances who had been told I was dead reached out, some angry at Jake for the deception, others simply confused and concerned about me. "I saw the post about your death anniversary and almost sent flowers," my former neighbor admitted. "I thought I was losing my mind when I realized it was about you, and you were very much alive when I spoke to you last month." My sister called from Arizona, furious. "Jake told my kids their aunt was dead. Who does that?" Jake maintained his silence, not responding to the single text I sent. "When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." I sought therapy to help process the trauma and betrayal. My therapist helped me understand that while Jake's actions were inexcusable, they likely stemmed from deep insecurities, rather than malice toward me specifically. It didn't ease the pain, but it helped me contextualize it. A month after the wedding that wasn't, I received a surprising call from Richard, my ex-husband. "I should have told you what was happening," he said without preamble when I answered. "I knew he was telling people you had died, and I went along with it because it was easier than confronting him. I'm sorry, Donna. What he did was wrong, and I was wrong for enabling it." His apology, while appreciated, highlighted another painful truth. Both the men in my life had decided my feelings and my very existence were less important than their convenience. One unexpected positive came from the situation. Old friends. Jake had cut off when he began constructing his false narrative, reached out to reconnect, having seen social media posts about the wedding incident. Jake told us you didn't want to see his old friends because they reminded you of his father. My son's former best friend, Michael explained. I missed you, Mrs. P. You were like a second mum to me. Slowly, I began rebuilding connections that had been severed by Jake's lies, finding comfort in the genuine concern and affection from people who remembered the real me. 2 months after the wedding, I learned through mutual connections that Jake and Amelia had officially broken up. She had tried to work through the breach of trust, but ultimately couldn't move forward with someone who had maintained such a significant lie for years. I felt sad for both of them, but especially for Jake, who had lost a chance at happiness because he couldn't embrace his real life, his real background, his real mother. 6 months passed before I heard directly from Jake again. Half a year of processing healing and rebuilding my sense of self. My therapy sessions had helped me understand that while I could forgive Jake, I also needed to establish clear boundaries to protect myself from further harm. I had just returned from a small design project when I saw his email. The subject line was simple. I'm sorry. The message was brief. Mom, I've been in therapy. My therapist thinks it's time I take responsibility for what I did to you. Would you be willing to meet for coffee next Saturday, just to talk, Jake? I read the email a dozen times, analyzing every word. There was no defensiveness, no blame, just a simple request. After careful consideration, I agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. I arrived early that Saturday, selecting a table in the corner that offered some privacy. When Jake walked in, I barely recognized him. He had lost weight, and his usually immaculate appearance was more casual, less polished. He looked both older and younger, somehow, as if the facade he had maintained had aged him, but its removal had returned something of his youth. Thank you for coming, he said, as he sat across from me, his voice subdued. Thank you for reaching out, I replied, working to keep my tone neutral, neither accusatory nor overly eager. After ordering coffee, we sat in awkward silence until Jake finally spoke. I don't know where to begin, he admitted. How do you apologize for erasing someone's existence? Maybe start with why, I suggested gently. I need to understand Jake. Help me understand. He looked down at his hands, which were gripping his coffee cup too tightly. When I first met Amelia, I was intimidated. Her world seemed so far above mine. I made a few small exaggerations about our background just to seem more interesting, more worthy. He took a shaky breath before continuing. Then I met her parents at a charity gala. Her father asked about you and I panicked. I said you had passed away when I was in high school. It was a stupid, impulsive lie, but once I said it, their sympathy was overwhelming. Mr. Huntington talked about losing his own mother young, how it shaped him. For the first time they seemed to really see me, to respect me. So you continued the lie. I said not as a question, but as a confirmation. Jake nodded. Each time I thought about coming clean, the lie had grown bigger. I had told more people, created more details. I convinced myself it wasn't really hurting anyone. You didn't move in the same social circles. You wouldn't know. He looked up, his eyes filled with regret. I never considered how it would feel from your perspective. I never thought about what it meant to wish you dead. It hurt, Jake, I said simply. Finding out my son would rather have a dead mother than me was the most painful experience of my life. I know, he whispered, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. My therapist helped me see that this wasn't just about fitting in with Amelia's family. I've had these insecurities my whole life, feeling inadequate, feeling like I need to be someone else to be accepted. You never needed to be someone else for me, I told him, my voice catching. I loved you exactly as you were. I still do. I know that now, he said. And I took that unconditional love for granted. I threw it away for conditional acceptance from people who only valued the version of me I pretended to be. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Jake explained that he and Amelia had tried counseling, but ultimately couldn't overcome the breach of trust. His relationship with her parents was irreparably damaged. He had taken a leave of absence from his firm, after several clients expressed concerns about his integrity. "I'm starting over," he said. "New job, new apartment. Trying to build a life based on truth this time." He hesitated before adding, "I'd like you to be part of that life if you're willing. Not picking up where we left off, but starting something new, something honest." I considered his request carefully. The pain he had caused was profound, but so was the courage it took to face it, to seek help, to apologize without excuses. "I'd like that," I said finally. "But we need to go slowly, rebuild trust step by step." "Small steps," he agreed. "Maybe dinner next month. I could come to you this time." As we parted, he hugged me tentatively, the first physical contact we'd had in years. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered again. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave up on you." Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. The journey ahead would not be easy. Trust, once broken, requires patient, consistent effort to repair. But for the first time since discovering my son had erased me, I felt genuine hope for our future. The past 6 months had taught me painful but valuable lessons about motherhood, about expectations, about the limits of love. I had learned that loving my child didn't mean accepting mistreatment. I had discovered strength I didn't know I possessed, standing up for my right to exist in my son's narrative. I had also learned about forgiveness, not as a gift to Jake, but as a release for myself. Holding on to anger would only continue to harm me. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing, but rather freeing myself to move forward. As mothers, we often define ourselves by our children's needs and accomplishments. When Jake rejected me, I temporarily lost my sense of self. Through therapy and reflection, I reclaimed my identity beyond motherhood. I was Donna Peterson, interior designer, friend, sister, woman of courage and resilience. Building a healthy relationship with Jake would take time and careful boundaries. We might never recapture the closeness we once had, but perhaps we could create something new, something based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. The wedding that never happened had forced a necessary truth into the light. Sometimes the most painful experiences teach us the most valuable lessons, not just about others, but about ourselves. I had discovered my own worth, my unwillingness to be erased, my capacity to stand in my truth even when it was difficult. And that discovery, painful as it was, might be the most important wedding gift I could have received. Have you ever had to stand up for your existence in someone's life? If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family challenges and healing. Share your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles is the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your truth matters even when others try to rewrite it.